Hello, and welcome to our video on Jack the Ripper, the infamous serial killer who terrorized the streets of London in the late 1800s. This case has captivated the public for over 130 years, and despite numerous investigations, the identity of the killer has never been definitively established. In this video, we'll take a deep dive into the history of the murders, the theories about the killer's identity, and the ongoing efforts to solve this mystery. The murders. The murders attributed to Jack the Ripper took place in the East End of London in 1888. The killer targeted poor, working-class women, mostly prostitutes, who lived and worked in the slums of the area. On the night of August 30th, 1888, the first victim, Mary Ann Nichols, was seen leaving a pub in the East End. She was last seen alive around 3:40 a.m., walking along Bucks Row, which is a poorly lit street known for its prostitution. The following morning, the body of a woman was discovered in Bucks Row, just a few hundred yards from the pub where Mary Ann was last seen. The victim was later identified as Mary Ann Nichols, and it was quickly apparent that she had been brutally murdered. Her throat had been cut and her body mutilated, with several of her internal organs removed. The killer struck again just a few days later, killing Annie Chapman. On the morning of September 8, 1888, Chapman's body was discovered in the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street in London. She had also been brutally murdered, with her throat slit and her abdomen mutilated. The police believed that she had been killed just a few hours earlier, between 5:30 and 6 in the morning. The murders continued over the following weeks and months, with victims including Elizabeth Stride. On the night of September 30th, 1888, Stride was murdered in the Whitechapel district of London. Her body was discovered in the early hours of the morning by a man named Louis Diemschutz, who was driving his car through the neighborhood. Stride had been killed with a single cut to the throat, but unlike the other victims of Jack the Ripper, she had not been mutilated. The murder of Elizabeth Stride was significant, because it was one of the double events on the night of September 30th, 1888. Just an hour after Stride was killed, another woman named Catherine Eddowes was also murdered just a few blocks away. Eddowes was arrested for being drunk and released at 1 a.m. She was last seen alive at 1:35 a.m. by a witness who saw her walking towards Aldgate. A little over an hour later, her mutilated body was found in a dark alleyway in the Whitechapel district of London. She had been brutally murdered and her throat was cut. The two murders have led some to believe that Jack the Ripper may have been interrupted while attacking Stride, leading him to move on to his next victim. On the morning of November 9, 1888, Mary Jane Kelly's mutilated and disemboweled body was found in her rented room at 13 Miller's Court, off Dorset Street. The crime scene was described as one of the most gruesome and horrific in history, with the killer taking great care to mutilate and disfigure Kelly's body in a way that was far more gruesome than any of the other Ripper victims. In each case, the killer displayed a level of savagery and brutality that shocked the public and the authorities. The victims' bodies were often mutilated and disemboweled, and the killer left little evidence behind at the crime scenes. The investigation. The murders caused a panic in the East End, and the authorities were under intense pressure to find the killer. The case was led by Chief Inspector Frederick Aberline, who was considered one of the best detectives in the country. Despite his efforts, the killer was never caught, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed about the identity of Jack the Ripper. Some people believe that the killer was a member of the royal family or a high-ranking government official, while others have suggested that the killer was a doctor or a member of the clergy. Still, others believe that the killer was a woman or that the murders were part of some sort of ritual or cult. The suspects. One of the most well-known suspects in the case is Dr. John William Druitt, a surgeon who is believed to have committed suicide shortly after the last of the murders attributed to Jack the Ripper. Druitt was known to have had financial and personal problems, and some people believe that he may have been driven to commit the murders as a way to relieve his stress. Another suspect is Montague John Druitt, a teacher and lawyer who was also believed to have committed suicide around the time of the murders. Some people believe that Montague Druitt may have been the killer because he was known to have had a violent temper and may have had a grudge against the women who were killed. Yet another suspect is Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who was known to have lived in the East End at the time of the murders. Kosminski was considered a suspect by some of the detectives working the case, and some people believe that he may have been the killer because of his mental instability and violent behavior. The letters. One of the most puzzling aspects of the case is the series of letters that were sent to the authorities and the media claiming to be from the killer. The most famous of these letters is the "From Hell" letter, which was accompanied by half of a human kidney. The letter was signed Jack the Ripper, and it was believed to be genuine by some of the investigators working on the case. However, there is still some debate about the authenticity of these letters. Some people believe they were hoaxes created by the press or members of the public looking to capitalize on the notoriety. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content.